I've got some sad news to start today's episode. My world famous bobble hat has been lost. It was a short, sweet end to a long relationship. 1 minute I'm in the cinema, next minute it's gone. But on the plus side, it's a new episode and I'm doing something cool. Roll the intro. That's right, in today's episode, we are slamming a mini quad, getting it modified and ready for all kinds of engine shenanigans. There's going to be some slamming action, some grinding, some world-class welding, and some dancing. Okay, maybe not dancing. All the intention of turning this unwanted mini quad into something very cool. Welcome back. It's Christmas time, the Christmas trees are going up, people are buying presents, you're all getting ready for the festive season, and I'm in the garage doing something dumb, which is just what you want from a YouTuber that you watch. Let's have a little look. And what dumb thing are you up to, Ben? Well, some of you who've been paying attention would have seen this flipping thing floating around in the background for ages. And I bought it super cheap ages ago. I was messing around with like the Corvette Power Wheels that I had and loads of other things. This came up crazy cheap. It had 3 decent 12-volt batteries in it, 36-volt DC motor, loads of little bits, disc brakes, obviously the rear axle. And I just thought, do you know what? Even if I don't end up doing anything with it, I'll have all the parts. So I've actually stripped it. All the axle, I've taken all the brake discs off, the calipers, everything, thinking I was probably just going to bin it. But I've changed my mind. I'm thinking at least I'll just do one last dumb thing with it before it ends up in the scrap heap. And it may not. Truth be told, I've been watching other YouTube channels and seeing people do dumb things with these. I ain't going to be the first. And some of the stuff I'm going to do to it is absolutely going to be the same people have done before. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be fun. It doesn't mean it ain't going to be super cheap. And obviously, if I blow up any of the engines doing some of the dumb stuff I've got planned, they're like £50 brand new. So, you know, I may well stick the DC motor back in it, the electric one, because I've got all the bits. It's got a few electrical problems, but I can sort those out. Otherwise, what I can guarantee you is I'm not going to be taking this seriously. I'm going to be cracking the welder and the grinder out, and in some way or another, it's going to end up cool. Even if it just looks good and kind of isn't particularly functional, at least it's a little swan song for it before it ends up in the scrap heap. But first plan is I'm going to spin the camera around, give you a vague idea what I'd like to do with it. Doesn't mean that's what it's going to be, but at least you know, if it's something that interests you, you can watch the rest of the build. It's going to be literally done super quick over a couple of evenings with bits I can get for next to nothing, and then we'll just see how we get on from there. So let's dive in. So first things first, like any good project, it needs to be lowered. So I mean, don't get me wrong, it ain't exactly far off the floor now, but I'm pretty certain I can get this thing absolutely scraping. So we're probably going to remove this rear spring, drop all this right down, do the front as well. And I've seen people have these absolutely on the floor. You do have a load of problems of like towing in and camber and stuff. I know how to sort all that out. I also want to ditch all this fairing. Maybe I'll cut it up and use it for some other things later on. And then cut the seat, mount the seat super low. I'm pretty certain I'm going to ditch the handlebars and use this steering wheel for some method or another, and then switch to like feet controls. But I definitely want fat wheels for the back off a go-kart. I haven't decided whether I'm going to put a petrol motor in it or not yet. I really want to find something weird and interesting. I was even trying to find little mini rotary engines for it, but they're all too expensive for what I'm planning. But if we go petrol, I really, really want to put a turbo on it. Some way or another, I will find a miniature turbo and put a turbo on it. I've also seen people put nitrous on it. So I'm going to dig the grinder out of here, start chopping some stuff off this, and then we'll see where we go. Time-lapse time! It might look a bit funky to start with. This bent wheel that I got sent by some slightly less than honest seller. If you look, these top holes line up, these bottom holes line up, boom, straight bolt in. I reckon that's going to make use of what is essentially a busted old piece. But either way, I'm going to carry on going. I like little projects like this because it's no effort whatsoever. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the front and rear shocks off, just to show you how low it can go, and maybe put a little bit of wood underneath it just to show it. But otherwise, hopefully I'll give you an idea. But obviously it's going to be a lot to sort out with camber and tow and stuff, because I think once it drops, it's just going to pull the wheel straight in. But don't worry about that. We'll figure that out in a minute. It's only a couple of bolts, so it's worth doing now, just to have a look. Right, you ready for this on the back? It's going to be a bit tricky doing this one-handed, bear with. So it's going to go from this right down like that. And obviously it's not going to be able to touch the floor like that. It's Gonna have to have a little bit of wood under here just to bring it to the height that it's going to be, and then we'll work something out. I don't think I'm going to be able to shorten the shock enough to still fit it in there, and I'll be honest with you, I've actually jumped on this and it doesn't move. Those shocks are completely useless. They're just for show, I think. So chances are I'll probably just weld the frame there, or I'll just make a little bar, solid bar to fit in its place. But that already looks pretty sweet. And there you go. I think that's about as low as it's ever going to get. Now, I am going to quickly stick a piece of wood under this like little section here just to bring that up just to roughly where it's going to be. I'm not going to worry about it too much, but now you will see my problem. Because that obviously isn't going to work. Now, the camber I'm fine with. The camber will come up a little bit, but obviously it's going to be, one, because these lower control arms are obviously now too short. If you want to keep this exactly like it was before, these obviously need either extending out, so either the bolt holes need moving, put some little brackets, weld some little brackets on here, and then bolt them to the brackets. Bring that as if I'm doing this. So it's got, you know, a bit of cool camber. It doesn't need quite that much. We'll figure it out as we go along, but I may well sort the suspension out first before we go worrying about cutting any of this other stuff on. So let's do the back. I reckon I'm going to start with the back, get that set, perfect height, and move to the front. No, I can't help it. I'm going to have to mount the steering wheel just so I can get a feel for what it's like. I just remembered I've still got some of the bolts left over from a previous wheel that actually, if I drill these holes out on the steering wheel just a little bit, the bolt will feed through and I'll be able to bolt it with some of these nylon washers. And I've actually still got some of these little dress washers as well, which you would have seen me put on the last episode. So I'm going to chuck a couple of them on there just because I'm a massive poser. Yeah, I think I'll look good. So I'm going to bolt that on and then we'll at least have one little mod done. That's all I needed. I do love that these bolt holes just line up, but what I've realised is actually, you know, for angles and stuff, if I just put a couple of spaces underneath here, it doesn't tip it back a huge amount, but just a little bit just to make it slightly less of a weird angle. So I'm going to bust out the washers, chuck a couple of washers under those, just those front bolts, and then bolt it down. I've done some complicated engineering mathematics, and I've realised that 3 is the perfect amount, purely because I pulled out 3 and they looked about right. You can see what you like about my channel, but the level of fabrication that goes on here, second to none. I honestly can't think of another channel that does things to the high standards in which I do. Right, I just got to see what this looks like sitting on it. I've stuck a bit of wood under there so the thing stops tipping over, because it's already tipped me off once. But the seat is going to be right back and right the way down. So I'm always going to be sat like, well, down here somewhere. That is going to be stupid. I think once the seat's down, that's going to be cool. That is going to be cool. Little foot controls, maybe a little handbrake. Yeah, this is going to be fun. Right, it is a new day. I'll be honest with you, I kind of forget where we left the last video off, so I'm just basically going to start from here. So I've been thinking about this car. And as much as I have no idea what I'm going to do with it once it's done, I do know that if I stick a petrol engine on it, that instantly removes most of the places I'm going to be able to use this stealthily, shall we say. Because if it's electric, you know, there's probably a few places you could take it sensibly, have a little bit of a go on it and not cause too many problems. I thought, you know what, I've got the batteries, I've got the 36 volt motor, the electrics are fried, but I'll probably go on AliExpress and just get a new set, like a new controller and pedal and all that shenanigans. And maybe I reckon I'm just going to go 36 volt to start with. I mean, that'll do 15 mile an hour anyway. So if it ends up being like a drift car or whatever I turn it into, that is more than powerful enough. And you can turn it down as well if you're just like cruising around a show or take it to some sort of event for a laugh. So that is what I'm going to do to start with. That doesn't mean I'm not going to put a turbo on it and nitrous on it eventually, because again, the engine's £50, etc., etc. I probably will once I know that it all works. I've got it lowered, it stops, it starts, blah. So I'm going to flip the camera around, take you where I am at the moment, and I'm probably going to grab the grinder because I've got a quick break from work. So I'm going to chop these front brackets off rather than have a tea break because I'm weird like that. And I think it's looking in pretty good shape. Right, there we go. So there's the motor. Obviously, it's a good size, but even then, you can see here, I'm going to be able to cut these brackets off and still move this seat down pretty low. And even if it's like basically right across the top of the motor, that should be fine. Obviously, I need to put the sprocket and stuff back on, but even this side, like, it's a relatively compact unit because really, apart from the batteries, this is it. Like, there's like a controller and a few bits of wiring, but there really isn't much to it. So it means, you know, it keeps it really, really super simple. Now, hopefully going electric hasn't put you off and thinking, oh man, I was kind of hoping just to see it with a turbo on it. Just bear with me. Sometimes you need to do these things in stages. And this is the stage one. And I'm doing it with bits that I've got lying around. So yeah, give me a break. Now, Father Christmas, if you're watching this, I would like a new pair of safety glasses for Christmas if I can, please, because I shouldn't be relying on these and the old safety squints to stop metal going in my eyes. So if you're watching this and you're young, or even if you're not, and you're starting out fabricating and stuff, don't be a plum and risk getting metal sparks in your eyes and wear safety glasses. But already, that looks way better than it did. That's looking a bit nicer now. Like I said, I'll just grind this off, and instead we may well try and figure something out on this front to give it a bit of a more curved front. But now really I need to make a decision, because once I cut this, to an extent, there's not a lot going back. My welder has seen better days, so I probably should start on something relatively small, or at least not that important. So I reckon we might do the seat next, because if I get the seat wrong, I can kind of work something out with that. If I get the suspension wrong, it's just going to fall apart and kill me. So I reckon I'm going to sit there for a minute, have a little think exactly where this seat is going to go. And then, right, actually, I've looked at this a little bit closer, and you can see this metal here has been like flattened so that it obviously sits, so you don't have to notch it. And they've only welded it across the top, so I can grind that off. And it's fairly similar with this. Now, I might not be able to get a grinder in there because I haven't got like a file grinder or anything like that. So I may have to cut this off. But I am wondering if this whole thing will literally just shift all the way down, and it might actually fit straight back, basically back on. So this will end up about here, and this will end up about here. Let's give it a try. Right, let's see if that done the trick. Yeah. I have to be careful not to obviously cut through the actual frame itself, but actually I've done a pretty decent job there, even if I do say so myself. So obviously I'm going to have to grind these little welds and stuff off. Like I said, the plan is to potentially take it from there all the way down to there, if the motor will fit. So obviously I'll go as low as I can for this DC motor, and obviously if I ever go petrol engine, no harm, no foul, that could literally be sat like this, because obviously the motor will go here and you only have the chain drive. But obviously while we've got DC motor on there, we'll have to allow for that. So either I'll run it low like that with the little go-kart seat on the back, or we'll try and reuse the original fairing in some way or another. So yeah, I'll get that cleaned up and we'll suss out about tacking it into place. Right, things are progressing nicely, just like I thought. So I've grounded off all this old stuff to tidy it up, and I've ground this back as well, and obviously made it so it's ready to weld it. And obviously what I realised before is, one, these are contoured already from the factory for obviously welding up to this top bit up here, so they'll fit this perfectly down there like that. So I've got to do nothing apart from tack those on. But I also noticed, is because this is only welded on halfway like that, I basically took a dead blow hammer, which is one of those sand-filled ones, and just whacked it so they were a lot more down, so instead of being at such an angle. And what that has done, I'm doing this with my left hand, which is never a good idea, it's going to solve two problems for me, because one, it now clears the motor just, and it's going to make the seat nice and strong because those are going to be welded down, but also it's going to lock the quad at that ride height, because it's not going to have suspension or anything, because it's not really what it's going to be used for. So I get a perfectly low seat, which should be pretty cool, I hope, even with my long old legs. And it locks the suspension, so double win. So probably what I'm going to do is, for the time being, I'm going to put two tiny little tacks on here that'll be dead easy just to pull off if I need to. So then when I start taking other things apart, if I suddenly realise I've forgotten something, or I can't take the motor out, or whatever I need to do, because that, you know, that needs to happen, then I haven't ruined everything. So yeah, I'll do that, and then we can start cracking on with some other stuff. Wow, you can see it's been a long time since I used this thing. Look at the state of this. Sorry, old boy, let's see if you still work, and I'm still as terrible at welding as I used to be. Well, I'm putting on a welding mask that's been under my workbench for quite some time, and some overalls that have likewise been in it, so who knows what kind of monstrosities are going to be crawling all over me when I finish doing this. But let's not think about that too much. I've cleaned up this spot here in preparation for the other one. I've done it on the piece of metal that I now can't find. Oh, there it is. Idiot. So I've cleaned up all these edges as well, because if I've learned one thing from welding, and I haven't learned a lot, is you need the best contact you can. Because obviously if you've got any paint and stuff on there, not only are you going to be getting all kinds of paint fumes on the go, but it's also not going to contact very well, especially on a not very good welder like mine. So wish me luck. Okay, far from nicely welded yet it is, but look, like I said, now the seat and the rear axle are one. Like I said, I'm always really tempted whenever I've got the welder set up and stuff, just to go around and weld all this up tight, straight up, and then realise I've made a mistake later, so I'm trying my best not to do that this time. A little top tip from somebody who has no idea what they're doing. If you've got, like, especially if you've got a cheaper welder, grab some old welding wire, wrap that in loads of little different places, and when you clamp that on, not only you earthing just on these little points on the actual claw itself, you've got all these extra bits to do it on as well. You get a decent earth. There you go, you can have that one for free. So I think it's time we address this problem. Time to unbolt these, and then I'll put them all the way out until these basically have a tiny little bit of toe in, and then we'll work out then how much we have to extend these two plates by on the front and back. But I'm hoping this will be fairly straightforward, and it shouldn't cause a lot of problems. Now, does anyone else ever start these projects? Because you've seen me do some really random ones with the flipping power wheels and stuff. You get about halfway through it, sometimes even right at the beginning, you think, what am I doing? I should probably be spending this time doing something more productive, like some of the jobs that need doing on the Lemon, or preparing for the new car to turn up, or painting my garage walls, or generally being a better human being. But as it is, I'm not. I'm wasting quite a large amount of my time and effort making silly things with no purpose. But that's all right, because if you enjoy it, it's not a waste, is it? Now, while I'm taking this apart, I may as well have a little chat, because we don't talk about normal stuff very often. As you know, I do this YouTube channel purely for the fun of it. I was doing stuff anyway. I was building the Turbo Sinker channel. I kind of wish I'd started the channel before, seeing as most of it was built by the time that I started it. I enjoy getting the feedback when I do things people like. I like trying to improve on the channel. And since I'm doing it anyway, it adds a new element to it. So I do enjoy editing the videos. It is good, but also I've got a pretty decent, well-paid full-time job, or decent for what I do especially. So for me to consider ever doing YouTube as a full-time job would be a massive move, and obviously things would have to get a lot bigger than they are at the moment. But I will say, I am not a million miles away from monetizing, not really. I've got enough subscribers, and for the amount of videos that I put out, my hourly watch rate for our 12-month period is very good. And for those of you who don't know, you need at least 500 subscribers, tick, and you need 3,000 hours viewing on a 12-month schedule. Now, with 500 subscribers, that would be very difficult. So you need more just to try and round that up. I mean, I'm doing pretty well. For a small channel, my hourly watch time across 12 months is great. So what I'm trying to say is, as much as I do well in my job, I don't enjoy it that much, really. And I absolutely enjoy this a lot more. So even if I manage to get the channel better for people that watch it now, make it improved, that would be great. And if I can monetize it a bit, it actually helps fund some of these stupid ideas. And God forbid, actually might mean I can afford a small unit to do stuff in, then things will improve even more. So if you start noticing some stuff changing over the coming months in the new year, that is why. I'm going to try and get things a little bit more polished, start using my audio equipment a bit more, because even now I'm just relying on the phone, which is why sometimes it's a bit shaky. I'd like to edit things a little bit better and just try to push things a little bit more, just to try and get this channel just a little bigger and a little bit more improved. I appreciate there are a lot of channels out there, and there are people that are doing some crazy stuff. But I think, I think we're good. I've got some good people following my channel, and hopefully the more things I get into, the more we can improve things. So yeah, let me know if I do some stuff that you don't like, give me a shout. And if I'm starting to change some stuff that you do like, let me know, so I know it's on the right schedule. Right, anyway, that's unbolted, and I don't think we're going to have to change this too much to get these to line up. So I'll grab the camera and show you, but we're talking, a few mil here and there just to try and get this facing slightly more sensibly. Already, and all I've done is obviously just pulled them out and placed it. I reckon we're only talking about 10 mil either side. Now, I actually quite like the camera. I don't have a huge amount of problem with having a loaded camera on the front, because it's not meant to be hugely functional. Now, if we just try and get in here a little bit, you can see that there's the original holes right in there, and this is the LCA if you want to get fancy. Let's try and twist this around a little bit more. And look, really, I only need to be somewhere in that kind of ballpark. I mean, obviously, ideally, you'd have them a little straighter if you were worried about handling, but let's face it, we're not worried about handling for this. So all I'm probably going to have to do is literally just weld on a little tiny extension here, re-drill it, and bolt it on from there. I think that's probably going to be the easiest thing. If I can, it would be easier to have a plate just go all the way across and then re-drill that, because it'll be stronger, obviously, than just putting a tiny little knock on it. So I may well do that. If I can find a piece and it will still line up okay, then we'll go with that. We'll just weld a plate on the front, weld a plate on the back, bolt holes in it, Bob's your uncle. I won't need to mess around with the track rod ends or nothing. Everything will work a treat. So I'll go dig through the old scrap metal pile and see what we can drag out for this. I use the word scrap metal pile loosely. I've got some bits of metal in here. Most of it's exhaust stuff. But I'm pretty certain we could dig something out of here. It's hardly up to grind hard plumbing standards. If you haven't watched grind hard plumbing before, watch it. It's really, really good. There you go. Look at that piece of meat. Now that is obviously probably massively overkill. And in fact, that's going to be a little bit harder to weld given how much fatter it is, and the frame isn't necessarily that fat. So we'll see how we get on anyway. Now, obviously, if you were going all out, you would cut this off and just put this in its place, because I think potentially welding a bar onto it obviously means that the arm then is going to have a slightly bigger gap, and it's not going to like that. So we'll have to work something out, whether I put one on the outside of here and one on the inside of there, just to kind of make up the difference. We should be all right. So either way, I'm going to cut some bits that are just about, I don't know, 10 mil, 20 mil wider either side, get those cut, and then we can suss it out between us. And that is going to be it for this episode. So I'm trying to keep these fairly short and sweet. In the next one, I think we're going to make some big progress. I'm going to cut and weld on those front brackets. We're going to shorten the front shocks, probably button up all the welding for the stuff we've already cut off, and then basically just start putting everything back together, all the sprockets, brake calipers, the whole shebang. Now I'm probably going to have to pause it a bit after the next episode while I wait for the new electronics to turn up, and then we'll just see how we get on. Hopefully my search for go-kart wheels goes well, and I'm not spending ages trying to find some at a sensible price. And as soon as we get this thing up and running, who knows where it's going to go, how many turbos it's going to end up with, and what kind of shenanigans we're going to get up with. But for now, that's it for part one, and I will see you for the next episode of Worn Out Racing, and hopefully it's before Christmas. If it's not, have a great time. Hope you've all been good boys and girls this year, and Santa brings you some lovely treats.